Okay, so we're going to get started with our lesson in a moment. Today's topic is the clause. So we're going to talk about the clause today. A very interesting topic. It can be complex, but it doesn't have to be too complex because it is rather easy. You get yourself. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so wait a minute. Where's your notebook? Don't forget it. Now, I told you you're supposed to have it, so we can't do that. Okay, so I deal with that in a moment. Everyone should be prepared today because today we're in it now. It's not like the beginning of anything. You're not trying to figure it out. Go back to that table right there, Mr. Salah. Today is the day that we should be more prepared than anything because you went to the course online and you started the process of the online course. So you should, and I'm going to tell you now, don't slow down. Spend as much time in that course as possible to get past everything that we've covered, to get caught up to everything that we're going to be talking about. So it's a lot of stuff. You need to be working diligently, but not so fast as to not pay attention to what you're going over. Obviously, you need the stuff in that course. So you need to work fast, but get as much as you can. We're talking about the sentence. And everything that we've talked about up until this point is because we need to understand the sentence. Because if we don't understand the sentence, when we start getting into the paragraph and essay, things become more difficult. Especially last year when we saw that we had formats for the paragraphs in the rhetorical essay, and that format involved certain sentences that we were supposed to construct or learn how to construct. Now, weakness in being able to understand that concept probably originated from your not being able to understand the sentence. So this is why we're going back over the sentence. And it may seem elementary, it may seem like low level, it may seem like, why are we going over this? But believe it or not, this is where most students' problems, especially with the SAT, begin with not understanding the sentence. So you need to make sure that you understand this. Hopefully you understand most of this. Sentences, of course, well, let's talk about the different parts and the different types of sentences. We know a sentence has two parts. It has a subject and it has a predicate. So we know that. That's the really basic stuff. It has main elements. The main elements are the phrase and the clause. The clause, which we're going to talk about today. So those are the two main elements of a sentence. The phrase and the clause. Now you have to understand each one of them individually in order to really understand what's going on in the sentence and how those words are being organized within that sentence. Now, there are four types of sentences. We have the simple sentence, the complex sentence, the compound sentence, and the compound complex sentence. The complex sentence, and if they name this sentence perfectly because it is complex. And without a doubt, it's this type of sentence that if students don't fully understand, will cause them problems with understanding the sentence structure from that point on. And not to mention the last type, complex compound sentence. I can't sit here and watch you not take notes. I can't do it. Find something to write with and something to write on. I just can't. You know, I wish I could ignore that I'm looking at you. Huh? Well, you can get some pen, you might ask somebody for a pen. I mean, come on. This is a problem. I mean, this is a problem for me. I can't. I just can't. I'm like I'm one of the teachers. I just can't continue. If I'm looking at a student not taking notes, it's driving me crazy. You know, you just looking at me like, you know, you here chilling, but you're not here just chilling. You're here trying to learn something. So here it is. I got to give you the pen from the idiot box. But you're not an idiot. You're an intelligent young man. You're going to have a pen tomorrow. Yes? 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 Yes. Okay. All right, here we go. The last type, compound complex sentence, is the 11th sentence and 12th grade sentence. Those are the sentences you should be writing without even really thinking about it. Those are the sentences. Because if you're not writing those types of sentences, then you're not writing on an 11th, 12th grade, 10th grade level. And if you're not writing on 11th, 12th grade, 10th grade level, then what are you doing? If you are in 11th grade. I mean, you know, there are 4 kinds of sentences, but that's what you talked about in elementary and middle school. We're not dealing with that declarative and imperative, interrogative, and exclamatory. You learned about those sentences usually when you learned about the punctuation marks. Although we will be going over punctuation marks, we're not going over the kinds of sentences. That's really the basic elementary stuff we're not going to be dealing with. Okay, let me say this and let me make this clear. Every term, everything up here, you have to know information. You should already know this information or learning it. But soon, listen to me, Zane, soon you got to understand all of it. You can't make it without the sentence. The S-A-T. That's what I meant. Can't make it without the sentence. You know, some things you can make it without. You can't make it without the sentence. You can make it without knowing the capital of France. But you can't make it out. Make it without knowing the types of sentences. Okay, so let's continue, because the clause is our issue right now. The clause. The clause, one of the elements of the sentence. What's the other element? We say there were 2 elements of the sentence. The clause is one. What's the other one? The phrase. Okay. Now, why didn't I start with the phrase? Because I feel like that is really lower than what we need to be dealing with in class. However, I put it in the course. So that information you got to get on your own. The phrase, the 5 types of phrases, and how they're used in sentences, and so forth and so on. You have to obtain that information. And you should already have it. So I'm going to say you're going to have to review it on your own, because we need to start with the clause. What is a clause? Much like the definition of a sentence, a clause is a group of organized words containing a subject and a verb relationship. Organized. And I like that. That's really the word I should have highlighted up there, is organized. Because it's when we organize the words in a sentence, the meaning becomes clear. So the clause and the group of words within it are organized in a particular way. But they will have, talking about the clause, a subject and a verb relationship. Now, if you've already, and I hope some of you have already, went over the phrase online, then you realize the difference between the clause and the phrase is very simple. The phrase does not have a subject-verb relationship. It may have a subject, it may have a verb, but it won't have both in a relationship. So that's the big difference between the phrase and the clause. And there it is. I already said it. Akbar Bass. Don't look at me all the time. Look what's up here also, because I just put some new information in there that you may require in your notebook. So I want to make sure you get all the important information. Okay, so But do not stop your knowledge with phrase here. Please go over the phrase material that I have online, because you need to know about phrases. That is not like not need to know information. It is need to know information. Let us move on. We have two types of clauses. Two types of clauses. Now, I know some of you already know this information, so go ahead and you can start raising your hand if you already know. Yes, Ms. Inge. Dependent and independent. Does anyone disagree with Ms. Inge's assessment or answer? Anyone? No? No? Disagree. Excellent. Yes, we know we have independent and dependent clauses. Now, if I had to pick out which one is easier to understand, I probably would take the independent clause as the one that's the easiest to understand out of those two. And if I had to take or figure out which one makes, for instance, a complex sentence complex to understand, it's probably going to be the dependent clause, because they have a whole lot of information that you need to know that surrounds it. So the most difficult clause is the dependent clause. So as we rush through the independent clause, remember, when we get to the dependent clause, that's the one we're probably going to have to pay a little more attention to. So let's get down to it. Independent clause. The independent clause, back to our definition, is a group of organized verbs that contains a subject-verb relationship, but can also express a complete thought. Now, we added this last part to the definition of a clause. Why? Because we have two types of clauses. Both types don't always or don't express a complete thought. The independent clause is the one that can stand alone as a sentence in itself. It can stand alone. It doesn't need any help for us to understand what the meaning is. That's why they call it independent. If you think about the word independent, then you know that means I don't need my mommy. Independent means I'm independent of mommy. I can wash my own clothes. I can cook my own food. I can do all the things that I need to do in order to be independent. You're late. Why are you opening the door looking at me? Come in and sit down. You know? So independent means I don't need anything or I don't need anybody. The independent clause, the same way. Now, independent clause, of course, and I just said all of that. Another name they call the independent clause is simple sentence. That's a sentence with just one subject-verb relationship. No frills, no thrills. It's not complex. It doesn't do anything really special. It says what it's supposed to say directly. Okay, I'll forget all of that. The independent clause, you can put a full stop at the end and have a simple sentence. Okay, so when you learned phrases, when you went over phrase information, there was a really important part that you should pay or have paid close attention to. That was the part of phrases where it discussed essential and non-essential phrases. Essential and non-essential phrases. Why you need to pay close attention to that? Because you are tested on the SAT on this concept of essential and non-essential when dealing with punctuation marks, more specifically the comma. The independent clause is always going to be essential. It's always going to be essential, meaning you have to have it. It's not an option. You don't have an independent clause, you don't have a sentence. So it's not an option. It's not like the author can say, oh, well, I'm not going to use an independent clause in this sentence. No, that's not an option. So it's always essential. That information should be very important to you because you need to know when to place a comma. And we know one time that we place a comma is usually before non-essential information or after it. I need you to, realize and understand that so that you can, store that in your head, especially when we get down to punctuation. You need to be storing that information anyway. Dependent clauses. Oh, I'm sorry, independent clauses. Still in independent clauses. Here's a nice little example here. Jim studied in the sweet shop, not sweat, the sweet shop, for his chemistry quiz. If we notice, we have a subject-verb relationship. I want to point it out. Okay. Jim is the subject, studied is the verb. So we have a subject-verb relationship here. We only have one. Thus, this sentence matches our definition of an independent clause. We also said that independent clause is another name for simple sentence. So all we have to do is just slap a full stop at the end, a period at the end, and we have a sentence. Here it is. Okay. So, dependent clauses. This is where it gets complicated. This is where students usually drop the ball. I need you to try to hold on to the ball. Okay? Talking about American football. I need you to hold on to the ball because you can't drop it here. Dependent clauses. Dependent clauses also create complex sentences, which are the most difficult. And then the most of the difficult is the compound complex sentence. So not getting this concept of dependent clauses, you really miss a lot. So, dependent clauses. The definition, a little different than independent clause, a group of organized words that contain a subject-verb relationship. But, here's the but. But meaning, contradicting what came before it. And in this case, the definition of the independent clause cannot express a complete thought. So you cannot have a dependent clause in a sentence alone by itself. If so, the meaning is missing. Something is missing in the meaning. So there's going to always be a big question mark in the head of the reader. This is why they say it's incomplete. The meaning is in. You don't know. What is it? What is that author trying to say? That's the whole thing. I mean, you have a dependent clause by itself. It's not going to work. So, cannot express a complete thought. Now, dependent clauses can't stand alone by themselves. Unlike the independent clause. You know them as subordinating clauses, because I taught you that word before, subordinate, meaning inferior or below or in need of. Dependent itself, that word means you need something. You are dependent. You need mommy to wash and clean and cook and do all those things because you can't do it yourself. Not because you don't have hands, but it just okay, so we won't get into why you don't want to do stuff on your own. But the point being is that it's dependent. You don't live by yourself. Okay, let me not just assume. Maybe some of you do. I moved out when I was 18. I got my own place when I was 18. So I'm not going to assume everybody in here is still at home with moms. Some of you may not be. But the point being is that most your age are dependent. So you can understand this word dependent clause, dependent, you can understand. Makes sense. Okay, they're sometimes called, and here is the opposite of independent clause, non-essential. Non-essential, non-restrictive, meaning that they are not needed in the sentence. An author can make a decision with a dependent clause, put it there or not put it there. As long as they have the independent clause, they don't need a dependent clause. But they put dependent clauses there to give more information. So, back to punctuation. This is where the commas come in. Now, if you went over the information about the phrase, non-essential and essential phrases, you got to put commas around them. Well, with the clauses, they have comma rules too. for this very reason of essential and non-essential information. But we're going to get into that in a moment. Let me tell you now, and I have to say it again, especially for these folks going to 11th grade. Punctuation is essential. The punctuation is essential now. In the old SAT, punctuation wasn't a big deal. 2 or 3 punctuation rules, you ain't had to worry about punctuation anymore. It's different, completely different. You got to know all the punctuation rules. So, whereas in punctuation was like a topic I didn't even discuss in class. Outside of sentence structure, I didn't talk about punctuation at all. Now I have to go over punctuation. You have to learn all the punctuation rules now, all of them. So I want you to keep that in mind. When Jim studied in the sweet shop for his chemistry quiz, it's the same sentence we had before, isn't it? It's the same one. Same sentence. Yeah, Jim studied in the sweet shop for his chemistry quiz. That's what we had before when we talked about independent clause. It's the same sentence. All right, so who disagrees with it's not the same? Yes, Ms. Zaina.
It's not the same because
we added when. You need to write this sentence down. You need to circle when. You need to put an arrow to the circle at the top of the arrow, at the beginning of the arrow. You need to write this word. Subordinating conjunction, because it's this word that makes this clause dependent. And this is why we can't put a full stop at the end, because now we've changed the meaning of the clause, and now the clause needs something now. It needs something for us to be able to understand what the author is trying to say in the sentence. We can't just leave it like that, because we leave a big question mark in our head. So we can't leave it alone. That's what we mean by dependent. And that's how we can create a dependent clause. These are the questions that we have. What happened when he studied? I mean, give us some more information about what's going on here. That brings us to our wonderful, famous list that you have to learn. There it is. In all its glory. You have to learn these categories, because these are the categories of subordinating conjunctions. Subordinating conjunctions, when put at the beginning of a clause, makes that clause dependent. So we need to know when we're trying to express a particular meaning to our reader, and we need a dependent clause to go with the independent clause to, make the meaning clear. We need to know which of the categories to use. If we're talking about time, we can't put condition, because then the reader won't understand what we mean. If we're talking about opposition to something we just said, you can't use a cause and effect subordinating conjunction, because it wouldn't make sense to the reader. So we have to know which one to use, or 2 things that happen. You will end up writing 2 simple sentences, which makes your writing look really elementary, immature, or you'll end up putting the wrong subordinated conjunction and make your writing look illogical. So we have to move beyond writing simple sentences with every sentence in an essay is a simple sentence. We have to go beyond that. Your sentence structure has to reflect your age. If you're writing an essay for the SAT and you're writing a simple sentence, every single sentence, you're not mixing your sentence structure. You look like a 4th grader. And the reader is going to say, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to learn how to write a complex sentence correctly, a compound complex sentence, hopefully correctly, and then it starts, looking mature. The reason, this student must have been in this class. Yeah. Okay, at any rate, these are the categories. I can't promise I won't give you a pop quiz on the categories. I can't promise that. They might want to get them down. I'm going to bet you might want to get it down. I can't promise you I won't have a pop quiz on the categories. I can't promise you that. So I need for you not just to sit here and look at me. I need for you to actually start writing them. Okay, so we have time, cause and effect, opposition, and condition. The time ones, I think you already know how to use them. So easy, after, before, when, blah, 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 blah. The cause and effect ones, I think you're using some of all of them, but you get the concept, cause and effect. Because always means that, hey, this happened because of that. Opposition, meaning going against what just happened, what was just said. Although, even though, whereas, while, so forth and so on. And then the condition. That's when, if this happens, this will happen. And when you're trying to express that kind of meaning, you have to use the condition. The condition. Now, in that in that clause we just looked at, we had a time subordinated conjunction, when. We had when. When Jim studied at the sweet shop for his chemistry quiz. That's what it said. Yes, we used when. So the rest of the meaning the independent clause, because we have to add one, we can't leave it there by itself as a dependent clause, is going to have to express a meaning of telling us what happened when he did that. I think in our whole discussion of clauses, this list or chart here is the most important. This chart is the most important. The most important part of our conversation. Okay, so I don't have time for you to get everything down. Just make sure you have the 4 categories and a few of the ones that I would probably write the ones that I don't use as opposed to the ones I use all the time. Okay, so examples of independent clauses. Okay, so let's do a little review here. Examples of independent clauses. Glaciers often leave behind holes in the ground. Tell me, Ms. Zeta, why is this an independent clause? Why is it an independent clause as opposed to a dependent clause? Omar, tell me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss. I'm sorry. Let me, because she just started. Go ahead.
Subject.
Okay.
Leaves the.
Okay. Okay. You want to finish what she said?
It's an independent clause because it contains subject, verb, relationship, and can express activity.
Okay, all right, so we just finished what you just said. She said that, okay, the definition is that it contains a subject-verb relationship and expresses a complete thought. And you said, yes, the subject is glacier, the verb is leave, and the thought is completed, right? We don't have any questions after we read it, yes? It answers everything. Okay, so that's why. Okay, so here, let's go down to the last one. Now, in the last one, I want you to tell me how many independent clauses we have in the last one. Whoa. Miss Amy, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't say her name. Go ahead, Miss Amy. How many independent clauses do we have? And I tell you what, to make the question more interesting, how many independent clauses do we have, and how many dependent clauses do we have? Yeah. So now we got a nice question here. One dependent. Okay, let her do it on the one dependent. Okay. Everyone should be answering this question. And you know what? I would have asked everyone should be writing the sentence also, because I got a lot to say about this sentence that you need to know. So everyone should be writing the sentence as well as thinking about the question I asked Ms. Zane. No, not a discussion. I'm sorry, I apologize. No, it's my fault, because I said yesterday we were going to change. So come on over here, Ms. Now. Come on over here. I said, okay. I said I was going to do that yesterday, and I didn't do it today. Okay, Ms. Zane. One independent and one dependent. Okay, so one independent and one dependent. Everyone should have written this sentence already. But while we are waiting for everyone to write the sentence, I'm going to ask Mr. Yusuf, do you agree with Ms. Zayman? She said one independent and one dependent. Come on, that last sentence there. Okay, so let's read this last sentence together. Kettle holes result when a large block of ice is left behind the glacier and then melts away, leaving a large depression. Huh? Oh, so you're going to disagree with Ms. Zane. You're going to say two dependent? Huh? One dependent and two independent. Okay, so everyone's still writing that. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. I want you to write this last sentence, everybody, and I want you to circle the dependent and underline the independent. Circle the dependent clause and underline the independent clause. And let me repeat the sentence. Kettle holes result when a large block of ice is left behind the glacier and then melts away, leaving a large depression. Okay, so we're going to have fun with this sentence. You're going to underline the independent. You're going to circle the dependent. And I also want you to draw an arrow to the subordinating conjunction, and at the end of the arrow, not at the beginning, one. Okay, anyway, I want you to write the category of that subordinating conjunction. Okay. All right. Does anyone in here disagree with Mr. Houston? He said two independent and one dependent. Everyone agrees? Yes? All right. So let's see. Let's investigate this issue. Yes. Okay, so we got that one. We didn't go over these two, but now let's look at the last one here. We said there's two independent, yes? Kettle holds result. I hope that was the independent clause you were looking at. Kettle holds result. Now, one point I want to make to you is that independent clauses don't have to be long. They can be very short, as long as they meet the requirement. Okay? Then we have a closer look. Notice the sentence consists of a very brief independent clause and followed by a long, complex dependent clause. But I want to take this a step further and say that we actually have two dependent clauses. What are the two dependent clauses, Ms. Angie?
Yes.
The two dependent clauses. What are they?
I think the first dependent clause is from the comma until the full stop. This is the first one.
Okay, hold that thought. Anyone else? Now, I'm saying, I think there are two dependent clauses in this sentence. Somebody needs to tell me why am I saying that?
There's another.
There's another. Okay, what's the other one?
I think it's from and until the comma.
And until the comma. Okay, anybody got anything to say? Anybody else? Okay, so let's go back over the sentence. We got one independent clause, kettle holds result. Then we start with the dependent clause. It begins with the subordinated conjunction when a large block of ice is left behind the glacier. That's one dependent clause. Yes? But then the other one is after and. Then melts away. We see that? The last part after the comma is a phrase. That's a phrase. Leaving a large depression. That's a phrase because leaving is not a verb. Leaving is a gerund. Or is it? Everybody. Circle leaving a large depression. Because I'm not going to assume that everybody in the class reviewed the 5 types of phrases. I need you to review that so that when you look back at the sentence in your notes, you'll know that that last part behind after the comma is a phrase, and you know what type of phrase it is. Okay, well let's go to the comma though, because I want to know why the comma is there. For those who know, for those who don't know, we're going to talk about why the comma is there. Why is the comma there? Because I said we need to know the punctuation rules. Why is the comma there, Miss Nada? Why do we put a comma there? What's the more information? Because you're right. That comma indicates that there is some non-essential information there. Where's the non-essential information? Excellent. Leaving a large depression is the non-essential information. We didn't need that, so that's why we put the comma there. Excellent. I appreciate that, Miss Nada. Okay, here we go. Let us continue here. Connecting independent clauses. This is the easy part. Compound sentence. This is the easy part. This is the easy stuff concerning sentences. The compound, I think it's easy. That's just me. Okay. Connecting two independent clauses, you have rules. Not only the fanboys. And I'm glad you said the fanboys because you just have to know that. That's just like absolute. But then now there is more information you have to know. More importantly, the punctuation marks that we use to connect independent clauses. Because you are tested on them, you have to know them now. So, the fanboys we know. The punctuation rule with fanboys is that you have to have a comma before it. You can also connect two independent clauses by a colon. This is when the second independent clause helps explain the first. Love my two sisters. I love my two sisters. They bake me pie. The second part of the sentence is explaining the why he loves his sisters. I need you to get this. This is a really important punctuation rule. The colon explains what comes after the colon, explains what came before it. Because we all know the colon has a brother, a little brother, called the semicolon. And many students are confused about the difference between the colon and the semicolon, and they get the question wrong in SAT. Why? Because they just don't know. So I want to talk about the colon first, because that's the one students are not familiar with or haven't learned about. The colon, it is used why? It's used when the author wants to explain what came before. So the moment you start explaining what came before, you put the colon, and then you do the explaining. This is when you're connecting two independent clauses. Understand, two independent clauses. When one clause is explaining the other, we're going to use a colon, or we can use a colon. So this colon rule is golden. This is a golden piece of information that you want to take advantage of. The colon. Okay, moving on. Because there's more. Believe it or not, there's more to this story, and we got a lot of time to tell the story, Mr. Ahmed. So let's get it. The semicolon, the little brother of the colon. You can connect two independent clauses using a semicolon by itself. So what's the difference between using a colon and a semicolon? We already know the colon explains what came before it. The semicolon is a little simpler, because the semicolon simply indicates that the two clauses are related to each other. One is not explaining the other. It doesn't have to explain. If you're going to explain and you're going to use a punctuation mark, you have to use the colon. But if you just simply want to indicate these two clauses are related to each other, then you're going to use a semicolon. For instance, the boy walked down the street, the plane flew in the air. Those two clauses are not related. You can't put them together using a semicolon. You can't do that. If it's the boy walked down the street, he kicked the can. It could be related. Maybe he kicked the can while he walked down the street. It's a little clearer there, the relationship between the two clauses. Thus, you can put a semicolon there. The boy walked down the street. He went to the store for his mother. Now we are going to put a colon because the second explains the first, telling us why he's walking down the street. Okay, so that's a really rough idea of this whole issue of colon and semicolon. It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine. I don't really see the connection, the relation between the two, but I guess it's the same speaker, and although it's the end of the world, it's all good. He's okay with it being the end of the world. The dash, also called the double dash. You might see it double dash, you might see it dash. The dash. You can also connect independent clauses using the dash. This is another punctuation rule that you need to know. You need to write it this time for the dash. It ain't just gonna pop up into your brain through osmosis. Got the dash up there now. I'm talking about the dash. We finished with the semicolon. I'm talking about the dash now. When the second clause is reversal of the first. Reversal of the first. Or contains a surprise element. When I use the dash, and I like the dash, I like to use the dash when I'm writing, I usually use the dash to indicate a sudden change in what I'm saying. A surprise. That's what we mean by surprise element. A sudden change in what I'm saying. So I'm not necessarily saying that it's related to what I just said, and I'm not necessarily saying that it explains what I just said. All I'm saying is that this information I think you need to know right now. So I'm going to put this information here. Now let's look at an example. I can find many reasons for coming to school. My students may agree with a few of these reasons. So I decided to throw that in, that last part in. Just throw it in there. Although it may not be explaining the first independent clause, it may not even have relation to the first independent clause, but I just think that's very interesting information that somebody needs to know. You know, after I said, I can find many reasons for coming to school. If you do that, or if an author does that, you're going to use a dash. So let's go back over the 3 punctuation marks that we learned today so far. The colon explains what came before it. What comes after the colon explains what came before it. The semicolon simply is related to what came. What comes after it is related to what came before it. And the dash, you just throw something surprise in there, something that may not even be related to what you just said, but you're indicating that to the reader with the dash. And this is why the punctuation marks are so important. If you put a colon instead of the dash in this sentence, then you're saying that it explains what came before it. That may cause confusion to the reader. If the reader knows that the colon is supposed to explain, used to explain. This is why we have to make sure we use the proper punctuation mark. This is why you are tested on it on our beloved standard test, the SAT. Okay, so moving right along. Continuing. Now, independent clause, connecting them to make a compound sentence. Now, when we use a conjunctive adverb such as however, moreover, nevertheless, there's a punctuation rule, actually 2 punctuation rules that go with this. The punctuation rule is that you have to put a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb, and you have to put a period. So when we use a conjunctive adverb to connect 2 independent clauses together to make a compound sentence, we have to place a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb and a comma after the conjunctive adverb. In this situation, if the comma is missing or the semicolon is missing, it's incorrect. It's wrong. So in addition to learning another way to connect independent clauses to make a compound sentence, we also got 2 rules that we got to remember for punctuation. And if you think you're not tested on these 2 rules on the SAT, you're absolutely positively, without a doubt, incorrect. I'll tell you that right now. You got to know this. You got to remember that. Just absolutely have to know, need to know. No, have to know information. Must know. Okay, so let's look at an example in a moment. All right. A correlative conjunction. We can also use a correlative conjunction to connect 2 independent clauses. And our favorite correlative conjunction, not only but also, but we have more. We're going to get a list of those in a minute. And of course, we know that independent clauses are often not connected by punctuation at all, but are separated by a period. In that case, we don't have a compound sentence. We just have two independent clauses, two simple sentences. So we know we can do that. If all else fails, we can just make it into two sentences. I'll give it a dash. You might want to write some of this good information on down. You never know when you might need it. I'm telling you. You know, it's that little thing you never think you need until you need it. Like, not only, but also, you'd be surprised at how much they tested on the SAT. You'd be like, oh man, that's right. But you didn't never study it. That's why you didn't get it right. You know? It's so easy. I mean, come on, make life easy for yourself. You know, life can be relaxing on the beach, or it could be stuck one hand on the side of a mountain, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do now. You're hanging on the side, one hand, and you're trying to figure out. Now, yes. Okay, dependent clauses can be identified and classified according to the role that they have in the sentence. There are three kinds of dependent clauses. Noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clause. We're not going to go over this. You will online, but we're not going to go over it here. So let's skip all of that. Let's go through all of that. Let's skip all of the adjective, adverb clauses, blah, 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 blah. And that's it. Somebody's probably yelling, what do you mean that's important? Okay, that's it. The clauses. Tomorrow we get into something else. Now let me deal with the late books.